sure whether to stand in front or behind.
Oh.
Just to sit on. I can't try here. Oh, yes. If you're interested in coming to another poetry event, I'm just going to plug poetry events.
Please do, yeah.
I run a monthly poetry reading in Hampton Bridge at the bookcase in Hampton Bridge. It's the third Thursday of every month. So if you want the information about that, you can contact the bookcase. I think if you just Google the bookcase, you'll find it. But yeah, that's as much as I'm going to start with the last poem I wrote, which is a travel train poem. And I was coming back from a horrendously long journey from Norwich last Sunday, which took 8 hours. And cancelled trains and stopped trains on the line, etc. And this is kind of what happened, really. And it was one of those things that happens that suddenly, one minute you're all individuals on the train just thinking about getting home, and the next minute something just pulls everybody together. It was one of those kind of experiences. The broken line. The train stopped, and then the news that 2 horses had broken onto the line. Evening came dropping through clouds like bushels of wheat, darkening with rain as we waited for the signal to clear our way. The train moved, cautious as a cat at night stalking its prey, and we saw from the bank, like a painting glimpsed in a church, 4 men in yellow jackets shielding the head of a black and white foal. Arms a corral, yellow bright for the foal's soft body. The mare stood at the foot of the bank, holding what hurt she could in bunched haunches, tail tucked, neck dropped, turned away into herself. Her faith, as ours, in those 4 clean bodies waiting their lives, this life, this long delay against the onset of dark, until the windows showed only our faces and the train crawled onwards towards its station. I'm just going to read quite randomly. I'm sort of in the middle of halfway through a new collection, and when you think you know what you're doing, I started out with a grand plan, and of course it's just taking its own jolly route, really, far away from my grand plan. The next poem takes a cue, I suppose, from the case study. Well, I think it's just a little story in Freud's interpretation of dreams about the father whose dead son is in the next room, and he has the dream of the child waking him about the bed burning. And I had a similar experience, and it was only when I woke and dealt with what I had to deal with that I then thought, oh, the burning bed, in the way that sometimes when you wake up and the meaning of the dream often will just kind of come to you in a phrase. The burning bed. This is sleep, this trick. The mind viscous as a bubble of air from a diver. And where you come to find me, it's as if I were lost. Your head in flame, your hand on my arm, a fever hand plucking at my sleeve. The door to your room is a cast peeling from the dark, a house crumpling like a sheet of lit paper. And it comes to this, that when you were 6, being awake downstairs, you saved your father from his burning house. You now restitched. You now, a refugee from walls black with fire, windows bulbous as water exploding onto the street. Connectives, filaments, scribble of wire, spirit map. This stutter and rush, one spark arcing free onto your bed, then ash fragments, petals of cloth. I have left you somewhere out of sheer forgetfulness. The motorway's weedy bank, a city falling to ruin, a path across moorland, a forest. The phone rings, voice urgent. You are in electricity. I see you picked out in miniature on gold plate. To have you in this world, there is something I must pay. You lift the covers and slip in. You radiate, mouth against my ear. Mother, I am burning. Tears slide to the pillow and evaporate. That voice again. Wake. One aspect of this, the wayward muse, if you like, I've written a great deal about my early childhood, and I think there are just some things in your life, as I think for my son, his experience of fire, you never really get beyond. So whilst I'm trying to write a book very much about, keep trying to write a book about place and weather, I'm also kind of writing another book, I think, alongside it still about my childhood. This is Bridesmaids at 7. It was past midnight. Up at the house, adults danced, drunk automaton reeling in the machine of music and voices. Window light aslant across the lawn, a row of contained and distant fires. You were the daughter of some cousin of the groom I'd never met and would never meet again. The same birthday, the same page boy cut copper hair. We'd been paired to carry the bridal train. At the photographs, the bride's veil plumed, a swan's wing to cover her face. Us two handmaids flanking the great dress. Posy of orange blossom and roses, the white birds of our twin virginities. All day we climbed deep inside the other, finding strange concurrences and marks. Strawberry knee scar, black jewel mole, opened a way to meet each 7 years under the eaten-out heart of a yew tree. If ever we entered womanhood and passed like thread through a needle, it was then. Dust blue gowns turned white, sashes red, faces the twin moons of that other world, while we flew barefoot and unobserved. Sensible order today. I'm going to read a poem from my last book, which feels like an awful long time ago now, 2008, given the lovely sensible price on the back cover, $7.99. The first poem, the tragedy of the horses on the line. Horses have been a symbol for me throughout my life and throughout my work as well. I think I remember somebody saying to me, "Oh, do you think you're kind of going to get past that symbol?" And I think actually, and at the time I felt that I should say, "Oh yeah, well maybe I'm kind of not going to write about horses ever again." And then afterwards I thought, I think actually there are certain symbols that stay with you, and because they say so much about what is something that you can't quite say for yourself. So I think I probably always write about horses. So this is Breaking Horses, and it's a triptych to the 3 poems, 3 connected poems. 1. My love of horses comes down on my father's side, through his father's father. There's a photograph, lost now too, of the cabby in his coat and whiskers holding the head of a tall gelding in its upright shoes, the tied-in fetlocks and roughed-up cannon bones those old cab horses always seem to show. The story goes how the old man whipped a driver known for his cruelty, brought him to his knees in the street, a long flick and smack about the neck as their cabs passed. With this for pride, I was both tethered to the post of my ancestor and sent skittering on like a yearling with its rump slapped. 2. My last summer at home, 13 mountain ponies were found, ruined but still alive, in a quarry above Kerwis, their lips cut off at the teeth, their ears close to their heads, their eyelids cut to the bone, as Evnisian did to the horses of the King of Ireland. What had they been brought to witness, these 13? Their fetlocks had been tied, and they lay tethered on their sides, eyes back to the white, a row of grimaces. The local news was full of it, and there was a general outcry, talk of ritual and spell, of something risen that had long laid buried. 3. Dostoevsky knew. It took 3 pages to mark the death of that horse, whipped to its knees in the dream. The small boy, Raskolnikov, holding all that time his mother's hand, this one anchor tying him to the horror, pushing it back somewhere, into his mouth, behind his teeth and tongue, the hungry cells of his brain opening a snap, then shuttering on the tiny, upturned picture. I lay on my bed in the early evening, unaware of the darkening tablet of window, the lights flicking on a mile across the estuary and the nightbirds setting out. I read like this for weeks all summer, and the walls held in that small room like a drawing of a girl reading, her mind an open mouth, an unfed hunger, the broken horse and the inaudible snap of the rope inside her. So it takes me. I grew up in North Wales, in Flint, which is just on the estuary, which is the kind of estuary I referred to in that poem. And we moved there when I was 7, and I left to go to university when I was 19. So I spent this kind of really sort of, my late childhood and teenage years there. And I don't think I've ever, apart from the odd oblique reference to it, written about it. Anyway, poem here, I can find it. And this is strangely, Flint Castle is mentioned in Richard II. And I remember having a conversation with you, Peter, about that when we saw Richard II in Hampton Bridge. Mm-hmm. And then I remembered, as you do, suddenly, we used to go down there as teenagers, down to the castle, this ruined ancient castle. It's mentioned in Shakespeare. And it's actually where Wales was, the treaty to sign Wales over, I think 700 years ago, was it's kind of, everyone had mixed feelings about this place because it's where Wales was signed over to the English 700 years ago. But we'd all go down there as teenagers and take drugs and drink. That's what it was to us. It was a place to get away from everywhere else. Because you really wanted to. This is at Flint Castle. There was nothing to decide. This was our kingdom. Grass tight with frost as we made a bed of coats and watched stars flick up over the battlements. The tower had a mouth when night spoke, crisp and cleansed as a voice coming through the Arctic. Beyond the castle, mudflats sheared to the estuary, the bleak slick of it pulling through us like oil. What we knew, your dad beat you, my mum left. Pebbles in the well where we counted falls. A mile out, the sea tugged at the coast of Wales. Our square of ground floated like a small white raft as the joint rolled and lit, flared its sweet tick over tongues, and we spouted iced puffs, sparks and merry-go-round that leaned us into each other. Fingers under belts, mute pads of some exotic reptile. The blow sped stars to car crash constellations, trail of light spinning us out, wired as candy floss. We stood on the wall and looked down to the fall of nothing into night. Although we would not see it, at dawn the mudflats would shatter like silver foil. No idea of the time. Rubbish phone. So, I've been writing a lot. We talk a lot about the weather. I've been trying to write about my experience. I live in Hebden Bridge, and I have a great sense of ambivalence about living there, because I think it's because I never chose to live there, and I ended up there, and I've sort of got stuck there. I think a lot of people get stuck there as well. It's a bit of a honey trap. And you meet lots of people who live there, and they sort of love it. They have a sort of love-hate relationship with it. They love it, but you have to get out. You have to get out regularly. But one of the and I know everyone's experiencing this, but really up until the last few years, it was the one place where it rained the most. Rained there all the time. And I've had lots of experiences of lightning there. I do a lot of walking. I'm out a lot with my dog, and I'm sort of out in all weathers. And I've had quite a few experiences of lightning hitting the ground around me and having to run. I'm thinking I can outrun it and getting terrified and going out and thinking I'll be fine, it's just a storm, I'm quite brave, and then ending up absolutely terrified. So this is, again, it's a triptych. It's kind of one of my favourite forms. And it references, it's called the lightning field, which references the lightning field is, if you've heard of Walter de Mario, there was a thing a few months back about, because he died, and he's this American artist who did big installations and a lot of work, sort of environmentally based work, and in the 70s he created this thing called the lightning field, and it's out in New Mexico, and it's kilometre square of lightning conductors. So the poem references that. The lightning field. 1. You have to race it, the black squall pouring half its cloud into the valley. You've gone from storm watcher to crackle of fear in the open field as sky presses on and darkness, eating the distance, climbs the hill. The field yawns longer, your legs plumb weights gaining ballast in each patch of rough and hillock until you are fixed there, blood in the back of your throat. Rain, like a wave, rushes in, and it is midnight, your small son waking you as lightning strikes past the window. 2. On a desert plain in New Mexico, where sky earths at the horizon, where sky is its own rainbow cast from gold and like a purple flag, you can lay your sleeping mat among 400 steel conductors, Hercules on the sun-given bark sailing for the Hesperides, and wait for the gift of lightning. This is deep memory of our long ago sky worship, the field rising around you at dusk, a fossil forest uncovered by the tide. Some have seen mast forks passing as an army of torches across the lit mile. 3. At 14, you will go out at midnight and stand naked in the backyard to let the rain into your skin, counting off the thunder roll as it traverses your skull, your shoulder, your spine, your heel, on out to the dark horizon that can only be thought of and not seen beyond the rooftops and fields. You are bringing the lightning in, hands inked in the night like a fisherman who knows that tug at the end of the line as instinct and rolls his catch by feel. And we can only wait in the hallway when we have turned out the light and call. Let me do a few more. I think I've got a couple of minutes. I'll read a few more poems from when my son was 6, I took him backpacking in Spain, and I was looking back at some of the photographs recently, thinking he was a baby, and I just took a backpack on him. I think I hadn't quite accepted, that I had to leave these kind of things behind now and be a grown-up. And after about 3 weeks, I was kind of, tramping around with this brave little boy. He finally said, "Mum, I'm really homesick. Can we go home?" So this is for him. This is Rainbow. In the hotel room, we saw the beauty of home, too far out to touch still and effervescently moving. Played the being home game until it felt too real, as if I'd stepped back and left you, watering the roses. We read until dark, and Pluto winked its blue eye behind the curtain. There was too much clear space, and the moment panning out was like light breaking over the valley, the rain coming over the Sierras. The fan turned the warm air loudly, and the same bee reconnoitered the window. A chorus of car horns repeated after the game, and in the gaps a she-cat mouthed the necks of her kittens as she moved them. When you left me, turning to the wall for sleep, I smoothed the skin of your small tanned back, the damp crook of your leg over the covers, your slim, bruised foot crossing Russia for home. Thank you.